Thank you, everyone. You will know what a great pleasure it is to me to talk to Tamsin Greig about Malvolia and other things. I was here last night. I'd just be interested to know, I can't quite see, but how many have you already seen it? You put up your hands. Oh, a lot. And it's probably 2/3 have and 1/3 haven't. Do you think that's about fair?
I think so. Can we see who hasn't and who I'm going to...
Oh.
I'm going to ruin it for you today.
Right.
Well, you chose to be here, so...
It was a great pleasure and an absolutely hilarious evening, I must say. Do you laugh at it? Do you still find it funny?
There are parts in it where I have a bit of a problem with laughing anyway.
On stage?
No, on film. when we're doing film work, and I waste a lot of film time because
So there's interesting offcuts.
Oh, they've made so much money from me wetting my pants on. It's terrible. But even the other night, Phoebe Fox, who plays Olivia, the way that she was reacting to me coming on in the yellow stockings, it just made me laugh so much inside because she looked like this little frightened doll who was trying to get away from the monster under the bed. And it really made me laugh, and I had to be very tight, biting on my cheeks. So yes, it does. I do enjoy it.
Well, even those of you who haven't seen the play will know that Tamsin plays Malvolia, and it is a sensational performance. But it's also very eccentric because although women have played Hamlet and various parts of the male parts, Richard II, I think I saw an actress play, but changing the gender of a major male character in Shakespeare, I don't think that happened.
I didn't see the Glenda Jackson Lear. I don't know if people saw that. Yeah, was that changed? Did she become a woman? No, she was playing a man. Okay. So I assume then that this is the first time. We did, when I was first approached by Simon Godwin to do it, I said it was a great idea, but I didn't think I could pull it off. And so he persuaded me to do where we'd sit down in a room and just read the play together with the genders not changed. And Malvolia talks so much about being a man, and people talk about him as being a gentleman, that it just felt a little bit like I was back at my girls' school and, playing a male part, because I always did, because I had big hands. And I couldn't keep a straight face in the Crucible either at school, so terrible.
Very funny play.
It was great, really loads of jokes in that. So I again said, well, I think it's not going to be possible because I don't feel like a man, even though people mistake me for a man. That happens, Joan.
Right, okay.
Even last week, someone said, "And for you, sir." And I was like, oh, come on. Oh, not again. Come on. So we did another workshop with a group of brilliant actors. And we started to look at changing the pronouns then and the gender. And then the light started to shine. And we were thinking, okay, so there's something in it. I was originally thinking that maybe I was playing it as a woman. She was a woman, genetically, but was dressing as a man. In history there have been women who pretended to... Yes, I know, absolutely. Have pretended to be men in order to get by in a world that they wouldn't necessarily have access to. I thought that was a possibility. Or that she was possibly intersex.
But we'll come to that in a moment. But let's roll it back further. Where did the idea first come? It's in Simon's head. He just decided. He just had the idea.
Well, I began a conversation with the National. I was here 8 years ago doing a David Hare play in the Cottesloe, and then I waited for 8 years for the phone to ring, and it didn't. And then we got together and had a conversation and said, what sort of thing would you like to do? And I, made my list of things I'd love to do. And of course, everyone else has already got that list, and had already dibbed the great parts. And so we started to think slightly wider than that. And I said, as in a kind of petulant way, why would you not offer me the role of Viola, for example? And there was a silence. And I thought it was rude. But because, I mean, it's very interesting. All the interviews that I'm doing recently, and particularly with female journalists, say to me, so you're reaching that age now, aren't you? And I say, what age is that? And they go, well, you know, when it all just, you know, stops.
Well, I have to say, I've lived through generations in which actresses have said the bugger about growing old. Once you hit 45, there are no parts for women. There's been a cry for generations, hasn't there?
Well,
no parts for older women.
Yes, but I think in my generation, the landscape has really changed.
That's great.
And is changing more and more. And so in my belligerence, I said to Natasha, well, what is it? Why wouldn't you? You know, people are doing old Shakespeare, just, you know, geriatric Shakespeares. Why can't you do a middle-aged one? What's that all about? And they said, oh, yes, that's very, very interesting. And then it went... then it went quiet. And then they came back and said, well, what about Malvolio? And I said...
Oh, the Malvolia came from them.
Yeah.
What a shock that must have been to
Yes,
me.
but what I thought was wonderful was that they were engaging in a really interesting conversation, rather than saying, that's not possible. But they went away and thought, but what is possible? What can we do now? And it was me, actually, who sort of put the brakes on and went, oh... Also because the conversation about gender and sexuality is so hot at the moment, and my fear was that if I was going to be playing it as either intersex or as a lesbian or, you know, for that character to be so abused.
You become part of that conversation,
yes,
don't you?
you do, but also you become part of agreeing that abusing someone who's trying to express their innermost desires is acceptable. And so we had to tiptoe very carefully around that hot argument.
And to call the part Malvolia, did that come early?
Yes, that was Simon Godwin. Yes, he had that originally. But I did have to say to him, even in rehearsals, am I a woman? Can you just like clear it up for me? Because I think as an actor, I have to know, you know, am I a woman?
Where along the spectrum do you come?
Yes, what do I... Because I think we all ask ourselves that question all the time.
More and more so now.
More and more, I think, you know...
It's changing, isn't it?
So he did say, yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Which
100%.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the people who'd played the part before, Donald Sinden, Stephen Fry, Derek Jacobi, what predecessors to have in the role?
I know.
Did you see any of those?
I saw Anthony Sher, who made me laugh my socks off. I thought he was absolutely genius. And I also saw Bernard Bresslaw do it at the open air in Regent's Park. And so I'd seen, you know, brilliant Malvolios. And there was a tiny part of me that said, no, you upstart, you simply cannot get into that group. You know, you can't do that.
Right, so you have certain decisions. Once the decision is made, it's going to be Malvolia, and she is going to be a woman. You've got still got a long way to go, because she is the steward to Olivia. So she is the steward, servant, handmaiden. I mean, what are we getting into there?
Yes, they did change steward to stewardess, and which made me do that a lot. You know, these are your exits if you need to leave the production. And so we did then reduce that back to steward, just because stewardess has its own
I'm afraid it carries
problems.
too much baggage.
But
literally.
Yeah. Oh. That's a great... I've totally stolen that joke. I hope that's okay. I will quote you. And but it wasn't just about changing Malvolio into a female character. They then wanted to see how far that could be pushed, and decided, you know, Shakespeare says in the play she has abjured the company of men about Olivia after the death of her father and her brother. And so they then thought, well, how interesting would that be? So that it was actually true that her whole household is female. So Feste is now a woman, and Fabian is now a woman, and all the household are all female. But then also, because Feste is this, is this character that has access everywhere. She can get everywhere. A bit like actors and presenters. You can kind of get anywhere.
Feste is always a sort of androgynous character, though, isn't it? Usually in plays and performances.
Yes.
I've always thought, particularly being the one with the songs and the melancholy and the whole of the sort of spiritual side of the play.
Yes, yes, but then we did decide to keep words like fellow about Feste in, because of that sense of being able to go everywhere. Yes. And so she's then not defined by herself as a woman, but just by her availability. But with Malvolia, we just kept taking out all the references to man and gentleman, and we tried to change it to gentlewoman, but even then I wanted her to not express herself, her own self, as a woman. And I had to do this interview where they asked about all the different actors, what they thought their character felt about love. How do they express their understanding of love? I was thinking about this. Malvolio doesn't talk about his or her love. She only talks about being loved. She only talks about Olivia loving her. Yeah. So actually then it's not then about her being a woman. She doesn't talk about herself. She doesn't see herself. She only sees about this thing that she desires.
But Malvolio and Malvolia are really consumed with self-love, aren't they? Don't they worry about themselves and how much people love them and regard them, and they want to be great and famous and successful? They slightly claim that they are already, but they're uneasy about that, isn't that
yes,
something?
and Olivia does say that you're sick of self-love.
Yes.
Which I think is brilliant, and I think that Malvolia loves that she's so concerned with and also she's a Puritan, so she knows the Bible backwards, and so that thing of love your neighbor as yourself means you have to start with yourself. So therefore, I'm fulfilling the commandment. I love myself.
Yes, it's a very good commandment.
In order that I can love others.
Which number is that exactly? Well,
and so I think that when the self-love is actually, she's absolutely sure about herself, and that all she has to do is make sure that everyone else who sees her thinks she's wonderful.
What about dress? Because there's quite a lot of important costume in this play, and the greatest coup de théâtre is probably your own, and the cross-gartering item. However, clear decisions were made to give you Puritan appearance.
Yes.
And black, and really rather Jean Muirish, I would have said.
Yes.
In style.
Yes.
Very stylish, and also your movements were not particularly feminine, but they were very fluid. They weren't girly. There's no scrap of girliness about this, is there?
No.
She's how did you settle on all of this?
Oh, these are lovely questions, thank you. My image that I had very early on in rehearsals was of popping corn. You know, little kernels that you put in the pan with butter and sugar. Yeah. And they're really tight, hard little things. If you get one in your shoe, I mean, you're dead. They're really, all the time I'm finding them in my shoes. They're so hard, and you can't break them open. They're these tight little, and you put a bit of heat under them, and it goes, and you've got this thing, and you can't understand how that came out of that. And so that was the image of the tight, black, ordered beginning.
Locked away.
And you get a bit of heat on when she thinks she might be loved.
Yes.
And she just goes. So that was the image then for the... Going to spoiler, for the big...
It's quite an elaborate reveal, I think you would say. Apropos of which, we were speaking earlier of a play you did in Hampstead, and I just said by way of gentle comment, I saw this play in Hampstead. It's a very serious play, I might say, but I did find something to admire in you, which perhaps other people haven't remarked on, which was the way you put your knickers on.
This was, as Joan says, is a very serious Tony Kushner play called An Intelligent Homosexual's Guide to Capitalism and Socialism with a Key to the Scriptures. And I took just to do the reading of it based on the title alone. And but there was one scene where I was lying on the floor. It says the stage direction is they are naked or semi-naked. And on the first day, I said to Tony that won't be happening. So that's gone. And so I allowed my character to, and they said, well, what about bra and pants? I went, no, that won't be happening either. So I had a long jerkin, but she had to, I said, well, what I will do is I'll put my pants on in the scene to show you that they have just had sex. And a lot of women talked about that afterwards.
Talked about it, thought about it.
And a lot of my friends were then horrified that actually they'd been watching me acting without any pants on.
You see what occupies audiences when they're watching.
Yes. But in Twelfth Night, I do have a lot of pants on. So that's good.
You look great. You look terrific. It's rather startling.
Well, I think the thing is, you put a Puritan in Elizabethan times in yellow stockings with cross garters, and you've got a brilliant image to build from. It's terribly shocking and embarrassing, and it destroys him. It's a remarkable coup de théâtre, as you said. And so I thought, well, you put a woman in a pair of yellow tights, and you probably think, well, it's quite cool. And so I thought, well, we've really got to push the envelope on this. So that's how we got the idea of a kind of... Well, then you get a staircase like that and 3-inch heels, and you think, well, that's the burlesque routine. And spoiler. And then I thought, well, she's exposing herself. So how can we theatrically achieve that? And so it was then about peeling off layer after layer and then having a little spin at the end.
That's a clue. Malvolia is treated appallingly in the text by the comic turns, by the opera bouffe, I don't know what we would call them, the comedians, but they aren't. And the comedy that presumably Elizabethans derived from seeing such vicious humiliation of someone they disliked, I find deeply upsetting.
Yeah.
So did you discuss, and indeed you embed in the pose that you take, Malvolia ends up in prison, in the dungeon, and hideously abused. And the pose you take then could have come out of some horrendous Bruegel painting. I mean, it's a really frightening pose. So you have gone with that, haven't you, with the thought?
Yes. Shakespeare writes in the text, he says, Malvolio within. So the way that they would have presented it originally would be he would have been either under the stage or in the section at the back where the pillars would have been. And you could possibly have seen his hands or something, but it is a dark place.
But I've seen it with like a cage, a prison cage. I mean, he's clearly in a cell, isn't he?
He's in a cell, but and he calls it a dark place or dark house. This house is dark. Yeah. But we wanted to really explore what it is to, because then it becomes very funny, because then it's about Feste pretending to be Sir Topaz the curate and Feste. So it then becomes this brilliant, almost stand-up routine between someone who's conversing with themselves and Toby and Maria being the aggressors. And we wanted it to go to a slightly darker place of control, because that's what Malvolia's been doing up to that point, is that she's been controlling herself and her environment and the people that she has authority over.
And the hedges.
And the hedges.
She even controls the hedge.
She's got to control the hedges, because then things are safe. And so we just wanted to put that slightly on its head, so that she then experiences herself what it is to be controlled. Because I think control comes from a place of terror. And she keeps saying, bring me light. She says to the fool, good fool. She starts saying good fool after she's been so rude to Feste. Bring me light. So I started thinking, well, that's interesting. She's terrified of the dark. And, what monsters exist there. And I really thought about that, the child, Malvolia. Simon made us write really elaborate backstories. All of our characters, everybody in the company, even the women working in the house, have got the most wonderful, elaborate literary backstories. It's really fabulous. They almost should be put together and
They've
put in a
created themselves,
program.
have
Yeah,
they?
that we've all
They should be
written.
in the programme.
They should be. They're wonderful. And Malvolia's is really sad. It's really sad. And
so she's been a steward to Olivia for years, has she? Or?
she's been in the household, within the backstory, she's been in the household of Olivia, with Olivia's father, probably as a child, but probably doing accounts.
Oh, yes.
And then, now that Olivia is head of the house, she's brought Malvolia in to be the steward. So she's suddenly now got this power that she may not have. So she's exercising that rule. And because Simon was really investigating the opposites in the play, he sees the whole thing about being a dialogue between order and disorder, between Puritanism and revelry. That the idea of control and fear, the terror that sits underneath control, that everything has to be okay, was something that what we thought needed to have a light shone on it so that she's not hidden, she's really exposed. So then how do you then get someone saying, this house is dark? Well, you put a blindfold on. Actually, when it was more vicious in rehearsals.
Is it? Yeah, I mean, of course, it isn't seen as vicious by Sir Toby and the gang, because they think it's all hilarious, however cruel it gets.
Yes.
Which puts them slightly at odds with modern sensibilities, because you're meant to say, oh no, the joke's over, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah,
they don't say that, they think it's hilarious.
Yeah, well, I think we do keep going with the joke, and I think that may well be the point of it, is that if you're going to start on that journey, okay, this is where it's going to go, guys.
Yes.
People's careers have been turned around by taking a joke too far. Yeah. And but I also think there is something like a catalyst, that Feste, as the fool who has access everywhere and can say things like the fool in Lear, can speak about truth, can tell truth into someone's heart in a way that other people can't. That she has access to tear down Malvolia's control in order to set her free. And I think there is something there's something purifying that Feste does, that it's not all about maliciousness.
No, Feste is a sort of but neutral, inclined to be good, really, sort of the wholesome heart of the play in some ways, because of the songs, I always think. But
yes,
also,
and tells the truth. Songs
the
are
truth
really
of that,
sad.
Yes. But of course she doesn't get her revenge, Malvolia, does she? She goes off into the night. She will be revenged on you all.
As well, there's the sequel.
Yeah.
Somebody write it.
It is the most complicated play because, of course, it is about male and females getting mixed up and male actors playing females who are pretending to be male. So the complexity of the sexual charade is incredible. And Shakespeare started it, I don't know, but I mean, the whole idea of sexual fluidity and who we are at any one time is extraordinary. Did you talk about that when you were in rehearsal? I mean, because we've always known the plot, but somehow in the times in which we live, it's somehow much more insightful, isn't it?
I think it is speaking into an interesting debate at the moment about who am I and how do I express myself and how am I seen. So yes, we did talk a lot about that, and where do I orientate myself and how am I viewed? I, as a person, Tamsin, I feel like a woman. I feel very womanly, but often people mistake me for a man, and there is a confusion in that.
Where does this happen?
Well, in Pret, when I get my lunch. On the tube. Oh, sorry, sir. And so how you feel is often not how you are perceived. And then it also sets up an interesting question about, we are the selfie generation of, do I exist? If I take a photograph of myself in front of this monument, it exists, and so do I. And if I send it out on social media, everyone knows I exist. Gone are the days when you just took a picture of it. Just take a picture of the thing. You don't have to be in it, but now we do. And we're also, the whole Facebook thing of, how do I seem? Well, how can I, in a way, trick you into being what you want me to be? I think that's a really hot present argument at the moment. And, Olivia sees Cesario and goes, oh, yep, that's for me.
Yeah.
No, and then as Viola says, disguise, I see thou art a wickedness, wherein the pregnant enemy doth much. As soon as you begin to pretend that you are something that you're not, that's when the trickster gets in and can play all sorts of games with everybody's mind. So I think it's a call to one's own authenticity.
But you're an actress. And that's what actresses do all the time. They change their identity.
Yes, or what we're doing is we're drawing out of the palette of colours that each human being is. Are we drawing one colour that is already there out and going, look at this bit? Because I'm sure, I like to wipe down surfaces at home. That's that. Okay, my name is Tamsin Greig. I'm a wiper down of surfaces. All right, that's my confession here in the group. I hope you will all share as well. But when I go home, if there are crumbs on the surface, I don't want that. I will wipe them down. And I think there is an element of control going on there. So I just started to dig around in that. And if you keep going with that, then you need to have your plant pots lined up.
Yes. I did, of course, make a sexual fluidity error in referring to you as an actress, because now I'm required to speak of you as an actor. That changed about 10, 15 years ago.
Yes, well, I think that's also viable. It was very funny. One guy that was driving me to set one time, he said, so do you call yourself an actor or an actress? And I said, well, personally, I call myself an actor. He goes, yeah, that's good, that. I said, why is that? He goes, well, where I come from, actress has an altogether different meaning. That's right. So I thought it was really funny. So for him, I call myself an actor.
But let's talk about other things as well as Shakespeare, because, I mean, you have still a career in radio in the Archers. How many people knew that? Oh, lots of people. That's because I don't listen to the Archers, but you don't often appear because you live in Hungary. Is that right?
Well, Debbie lives in Hungary.
I'm confusing people.
And, so I went in for 6 months in 1991, and here we are. And, I'm great on the radio because I'm any age, and I can bob back in from Hungary and, whack a few hornets' nests and go away again.
That's a rather nice continuing story, isn't it?
Oh, I think it's an amazing thing. What other country in the world could have an ongoing drama, from 1951, where people tune in to listen to stuff about digesters?
But also, have critical stories that change the national agenda when it comes to talking about, life and issues.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Rob Helen story has set people on fire with the idea of what is it to be abused and to not know you're being abused, and what is it to be an abuser and not know you're an abuser. Particularly in the middle classes.
Yes, that was very, very cunningly injected into the national debate.
Brilliant.
So, right, so radio is still going strong. Film, I have to ask about television, basically, because as you know, I think I'm a great fan of episodes. How is Episodes doing? Is it coming back?
Episodes, we have shot the final series.
Oh.
Yep, that's your lot. And
because you're going to Hungary.
Yes. I went to Hungary because I was doing television, and now television's over because they need me back there in Hungary. So that's done, and I think that's airing in the summer in America.
It was a delightful idea. It's a very, for those who don't know it, it's about a husband and wife script writers who write their very, very English, and yet they're recruited by Hollywood. Not a likely tale, although there are some English script writers in Hollywood, aren't there?
Well, you have the team who put Sherlock together.
That's right, and Ian Lafrene, and a long time ago went.
Yes.
So, and they write the scripts, and of course then they go over and get into all sorts of scrapes, and the scripts don't fit or do, and it's a very, very original idea.
It's a wonderful idea, written by Jeffrey Clarick and David Crane. David Crane was the originator of Friends, this little show they had in America, And he and his partner Jeffrey put this idea together because they're writers and they wanted to talk about what it is to be aliens controlled by very, very powerful TV networks. And so they got Brits as aliens and put them in LA. And so we were brought over having had this huge Brit hit, which is a bit like History Boys. And we had the wonderful Richard Griffiths in the first series. And he's brought over and has to re-audition for his own part for the Americans because they think maybe he's not really very sympathetic character because he's English. And they sack him and decide that the part has to be played by Matt LeBlanc of Friends, who played Joey in Friends. And so we're forced to write for him, and there begins a terrible relationship of...
It's very brilliantly, that story is wonderfully.
Brilliant writers, they're
it's great.
So
well, that's one. So, I mean, you have done a whole string of comedy soaps, and they all hinge and indeed have forced you to find yourself identified as a comic actress. And I wonder whether you mind that or not.
I do mind it. And I read an interview today, an article today. I did a Q&A yesterday, and some very interesting questions came up about this one particular piece that had been written by a reviewer in The Telegraph. I don't know if people had read that, by Dominic Cavendish, about this. And I don't read reviews, but obviously it filters through, and there's now been a big discussion about what this guy had written. And apparently he had said that his fear about this production of Twelfth Night meant that he was suffering the grief of the death of the great male lead. So I thought, so we had an interesting discussion about that last night, and so I thought, okay, I better read this so I know what I'm talking about. And just as, I'll come back to that, but just as to respond to what he said, I thought three things about it. One, I think the great male lead will be okay.
They'll be glad.
I think they'll be fine. Second of all, he's been around in the business and has a huge knowledge about theatre, and what he's talking about is he is mourning what he has always known. And in the spirit of the freedom of speech, I think that's absolutely right to say, I'm mourning the loss of the change of my landscape. Absolutely fine. My third idea about that was he wouldn't have dared say anything if it had been a black man playing Malvolio.
No.
You can't have that conversation, but the fact that it was a woman playing it, he could still go...
Well, we can expect that.
So I went and read his piece with an open heart. And two things tripped me up in what he said. He did call me comedy actress, Tamsin Greig. And then he... And, of course, we shouldn't, give oxygen to the flames, but he did use the phrase, it is a small step for this androgynous star.
So, the point...
So, my point about, to answer your question is, I think it was slightly unenlightened vocabulary to call me comedy actress, androgynous, and star, because this is an ensemble. Of all Shakespeare's plays, this is an ensemble, and that's why I agreed to do it, because the people that he's been able to cast in this are at the top of their game, and that's the company that I want to find myself in.
But the point is, one of the skills, which you have many, is your capacity. You've been doing it this afternoon, is just to turn a phrase with a twinkle in your eye, or possibly even just in your brain, and know that people will respond with laughter. You can do it. You do it without noticing. You do it with. It's natural. But it's also turned to enormous effect.
Well, maybe I need to just stop that.
There you are. There you are.
One of my nephews,
QED.
when he was very young, said, he said, "Why do you joke?" And I couldn't answer him. I think maybe I just need to stop all that, and in order for people to forget that, that's something that I'm able to do. And, you know, the thing is, I do have a big canon of very serious work as well.
Yes.
You know, you saw the Tony Kushner play. There weren't many laughs in that.
No, certainly not.
I played Edith Frank's mother, Anne Frank's mother in the BBC adaptation of The Diary of Anne Frank, which for me is one of the highlights of my career. And a beautiful piece written by Paula Milne, which is a 6-part series called White Heat, which she wrote. I don't know if you've seen it, but I think you would love it, because it's seeing all of the decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, present day.
Story of my life.
I mean, with the most beautiful detail. It's absolutely thrilling as a piece of historical documentation. And I played Claire Foy's mother, who was born in the 20s, but who was bipolar and who has a terrible journey with depression, and then has electric shock treatment, which we had to film. And that also is at the top of my list of no laughs. But, you know, things that I've felt most thrilled. When casting directors and producers take a punt on someone and say, maybe try this, you know, my heart explodes with joy at someone just saying, let's see what's possible.
Having had the discussion and spoken of your wit and skill, Malvolia is not played for laughs, is it? I mean, Malvolia is a serious picture of someone putting herself. She's totally serious. She's not funny.
That was the thing that I found delightful about her. She has absolutely no sense of humour. None. And when she does think she's making a joke, has to laugh in order to show to everyone else that she's made a joke.
Yes.
And it's not a joke. It's a very poor statement. And so that I found very interesting. There are elements of my mum in there she was a surface wiper and was quite controlling, and you never quite knew if she found things funny or she was showing you that she found things funny because she thought that she should show you that she had a sense of humour when she probably didn't.
How interesting has this been this afternoon? Has it not? Tamsin, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure. Thank you.